So hello and welcome everyone. On behalf of the UNESCO-UNEVOC International Center for TVET in Bonn, Germany, I'd like to thank you for donating your time to be here today for this BILT online Africa event. My name is Tristan Cole and I'm the project officer for the Bridging Innovation and Learning in TVET project, or BILT for short.
A very warm welcome also on behalf of the German Federal Institute for VET, or BIBB for short, which is the project partner in BILT. My name is Vera Haag and I'm the BILT technical advisor from BIBB. The BILT project is carried out in collaboration with the Univox Network. It is coordinated by UNESCO-UNEVOC with support of BIBB, and it is sponsored by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, or BMBF for short.
So the main purpose of this event is to introduce you to the BILT project and provide information on why, as TVET stakeholders, you should be participating in the project, and then we'll present some ways that you can do so. We'll also present past and current BILT project activities and discuss the BILT project roadmap. And during this session, you will have opportunities to ask questions for us as well.
I am very much looking forward to your input during this event, and I would like to encourage your active participation via questions and comments. This is really the opportunity for you to learn about the BILT project, to ask all of the questions you may have. And I will now explain some of the Zoom functions we will use. So first of all, I'd like to invite you to present yourself via the chat with your name, your institution, and your country, so that we have a nice picture of everybody who joined this meeting. Secondly, I'd like to ask you to please keep your videos and microphones switched off for the moment. You will have a chance to make statements and ask questions at several points during this meeting, and that is where you can switch your video and microphone on. If you want to make a statement or ask a question, please use the little hand raised function, which is in participants, and one of our colleagues will be keeping track of the hands raised, and we will ask you then to speak when the moment has come. So thank you for that. And I can see that you started presenting yourself in the chat. That is really nice to see how many people joined today.
Okay, so while many of the participants today are from Univox Centers, and you know what Univoc is, there are many external stakeholders participating who may not be fully aware of what UNESCO-UNEVOC or the Univox Network is. So please let me give you a broad overview of what that is. So within UNESCO, there are multiple parts that address education. UNEVOC is the part of UNESCO that helps member states specifically to address technical and vocational education and training, or TVET for short. The UNESCO-UNEVOC International Center for TVET is headquartered in Bonn, Germany. UNESCO-UNEVOC undertakes education-based initiatives in partnership with its members who are part of what is called the Univox Network. So here you can see a slide of the Univox Network. So the Univox Network is essentially a global network of TVET stakeholders, and they exist at various levels, which you can see. So ministries, national bodies, research institutions, or training providers, for example. Members of the network are recognized for their expertise in one aspect of TVET, and they're known as Univox Centers. Currently, there are 250 centers in 160 UNESCO member states. So at its core, though, the Univox Network, it's a platform for exchange, cooperation, and mutual assistance. So vertical dialogue and exchange occurs between the members and the Univox HQ in Bonn, but the real value is as a network and a platform for horizontal exchange and collaboration between the members themselves. So where does BILT fit in this? So the BILT project is one example of an education-based initiative delivered in partnership with Univox Centers and TVET stakeholders. So BILT seeks to provide TVET stakeholders with a platform for exchange in view of current challenges that TVET systems are facing. And these include digitalization of society, the workplace, and the rise of Industry 4.0, the transition to green and sustainable economies, a renewed focus on the benefits of entrepreneurial learning and training, and the increase in migration that requires closer engagement from TVET stakeholders to address. So, for the BILT project, we began with the activation of the European UNEVOC cluster. So what that means is BILT wanted to understand how are European TVET stakeholders addressing these challenges that their TVET systems are facing. We also want to expand the UNIVOC network through the addition of new proactive members of the TVET community. So a core element of BILT is a bridging process, and this connects European Univox Centers and TVET stakeholders with their counterparts, Univox Centers and TVET stakeholders from Africa and Asia and the Pacific regions. So the BILT project offers opportunities for collaboration among and between these regions through knowledge exchange, peer learning, thematic project activities, and expert working groups.
Now, BILT addresses 5 thematic areas. New qualifications and competencies serves as the overarching BILT theme. And why is that? Why is new qualifications and competencies our overarching topic? Well, that is because qualifications and competencies must respond to emerging trends from society, economy, and the labor market. And of course, these requirements constantly change, and therefore TVET stakeholders must continuously identify new qualifications and competencies, and they must continuously update curricula, training regulations, and occupational profiles according to these new qualifications and competencies. And in this way, TVET remains to be an attractive and relevant career path. Now, with BILT new qualifications and competencies, this overarching topic is underpinned by 4 work streams. And these are migration, digitalization, entrepreneurship, and greening. And our core questions related to these BILT thematic areas are, firstly, which new qualifications and competencies are relevant, with special attention paid to green competencies, to entrepreneurial competencies, to digital competencies, and to competencies related to migration? Secondly, how do we integrate new qualifications and competencies in curricula and training regulations once we've identified them? And thirdly, how are new qualifications and competencies implemented in practice in terms of teaching and training methods?
Okay, thank you, Vera. So as part of the BILT project, we as a team and the TVET community, we want to understand which of these BILT themes are most relevant in your regional or country context. So this information is important because it will help us know where to focus our activities in the framework of bridging. So you'll see on the screen here now, we have a Zoom poll. And the question here is, which of these themes are most relevant in your context? So this should come up on the screen. I don't think there's any way that you can avoid it. So we'll be asking you all, please, to take a few moments to look at the poll and to provide some answers. And then once this is done, we will project these, the results onto the screen, discuss these briefly, and then you'll have your first opportunity actually to ask us some questions. So we'll give you a few moments to respond, and then maybe in 15, 20 seconds, we'll put the results up.
Very interesting.
Okay, so now you should be seeing the same as we are seeing on the screen, which are the poll results. So it looks like the top result there is new qualifications and competencies in TVET. And this for us is very important because it's one of the overarching themes of the BILT project. So it's good to see that there's a recognition from TVET stakeholders such as yourselves that this is a very important element. Closely following from that, and by very closely, 3%, is digitalization in TVET. And I don't think that we should be surprised by this, given the prevalence of the digitalization of our societies, of our workplaces, of our social lives, and how digitalization is affecting job profiles and the skills that TVET learners need to be successful, not only now, but to be able to adapt and change and thrive in the long term. So Vera, would you like to comment on the last three?
Sure, I can. I think digitalization may also be on the second place because of the current COVID situation, and digitalization in TVET has risen in importance with this situation. On the third place is greening TVET, obviously also an important theme that has also risen in importance with COVID, entrepreneurship, and then migration on the last place. So we can see that all of these themes are relevant for you, but in a different order. And thank you for responding to the survey and for giving us this impression. Now, I'd like to ask our colleague Alexandra whether there are any questions or hands raised.
Thank you, Vera. We haven't received any written questions, and I also don't see any raised hands for now.
Okay, so let's take this opportunity. Now we've had this quick poll, and I know it's not exhaustive or representative, but does anybody have any questions for us, or would anybody like to say why they answered in the way they did and tell us what's important to them? If you'd like to do that, please use the raised hand or the hand raised function in Zoom, and my colleague Alexandra will pick it up. And then if you'd like to, you can use the video to directly ask the question to us.
Of course, you can also post your question in the chat, and we'll be collecting these questions and we can come back to them later during this workshop.
Okay, Alexandra, anyone brave enough?
Yes, we have a question from Gideon Kidego. So the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear, yes, Gideon.
Yeah, my question is, the greening and the migration and TVET is not very well understood. Can you please expound on that? Because I think most of us didn't understand by migration and TVET. That's why probably the score is very low. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that just a little bit louder?
Okay. I meant, my question was, are you hearing, am I loud enough? Am I loud enough?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my question was, the migration and TVET was, I don't think it was very well understood, because even me, I looked at it and I was wondering, what does it mean? Is it people are migrating from one country to another or from one location to another, and how TVET affects that, or how that is affected by TVET? I didn't understand it, and I suspect that could be the reason for the low score. So can you please expound on that, bro?
Okay, thank you very much. So if I understand the question, it's can we provide a little bit more information on migration and TVET? So for the BILT project, migration and TVET is one of the themes that was identified in collaboration with European UNEVOC stakeholders over a period of time before the project began as something that was of interest to them and something that they wanted to understand how the TVET community can work to address. So you will know in the social political context of the migration to Europe, for example, many countries are accepting refugees. And so the role that TVET plays in working with learners who've had disrupted backgrounds of education, they might be unaccompanied minors, economic migrants, whatever the cause is, TVET plays a role in understanding how they can successfully integrate into those societies in the marketplace. And this might be through, for example, the recognition of what prior learning that they've had. How do you assess those migrants? How do you test those migrants? How do you provide them with skills that they might not have had because of their disrupted learning and their transition to a new life, a new society? So when we talk about migration and TVET in the BILT context, it really is about how can TVET providers work with a range of stakeholders in that process to understand how to successfully integrate those migrants successfully. And it's not necessarily about competencies and skills just for the migrants. It might also be about their host communities. It might be about understanding what industry needs or industry wants, and how TVET providers can train and provide education for those migrants. So we've had many examples of this in BILT so far. So if that's something that actually is interest to you, later on today we'll be directing you to the website where we have a little bit more information. And there we have specific examples from European stakeholders of how they are addressing the challenge and the opportunity of migration. So does that answer your question?
I think my question is answered. I'm very happy. Can I ask you another one?
Sure.
Okay. I think I'll respond on how I answered the quiz that you gave us. So when I responded about competence in TVET, first of all, that one was the new qualifications are very important. And then the second one is digitalization and TVET. Digitalization and TVET, I'm actually based in Africa. So digitalization is not very well penetrated, especially in our TVET institutions. Actually, teaching now using computers in our institutions is almost impossible because we don't have connectivity. So that is actually the starting point. The students and participants might want, yes, to learn, but the connectivity is not there. And then the entrepreneurship in TVET. I want you people to expound. How can we turn our graduates here in Africa into entrepreneurs? That means converting what we have taught them to real products, whereby now we can industrialize. Because I know that's how China has industrialized. And Africa is grappling with the problem of actually coming off to industrialize. Even making small things like needles, making things like pans, making things actually very small, even toothpicks. We have to buy machines from China. So I think, can you tell us in Africa how you are going to actually bridge that gap? Because there's a gap there between knowledge and the practical, hands-on. Please, thank you very much.
Okay, so a nice, easy question then.
Yeah, I think you're covering a lot of ground with your questions. Thank you a lot for that. What I can tell you for the moment is that BILT is specifically addressing this type of questions, and that with BILT, our aim is really to exchange between European stakeholders and stakeholders from Africa to learn more about these questions and to find answers together. So if you're asking about entrepreneurship or digitalization, how can we increase digitalization in our schools with our TVET providers, then this is something that you or we can discuss with BILT, with all participating institutions, and that we can also address with the publications that we're producing with BILT. So with joining BILT and exchanging with partners from Europe and with other partners from Africa, we can try to get closer to answers to these questions. And I can tell you that, for example, digitalization, I'm a German person, and in Germany that is also a big problem in schools. How do we digitalize schools? So in the end, we're all addressing the same type of TVET challenges.
Okay, Gideon, so thank you for that. Has that answered your question? Have we tickled your fancy, so they say?
Yeah, you've done that actually. You've done that.
Okay, that's great.
Thanks a lot, Gideon. Thanks for your contribution.
Yeah.
So Alexandra, can I ask, are there any other questions for us?
Yes, we have also some COVID-related questions. So we have one from Okadio Yang, and the participant is asking, in most African countries, education and training was completely halted throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. In what ways can BILT help ensure that disrupted classrooms do not disrupt training in Africa?
Okay, so another easy one. Thank you very much for that question. So as we all know, COVID has been an unprecedented disruption. Even from the BILT project side, it's caused us to make changes to things, and this has affected, I don't think any part of the world has not been affected by COVID. So in the context of Africa and digitalization, one thing I think that has been a particular challenge is, as Gideon mentioned before, is you don't necessarily have the same penetration of digitalization in Africa because there's not necessarily the infrastructure, or perhaps the learners themselves don't have access to the same technology, the Chromebooks that perhaps, say, North America or Europe does, things like this. So the response from the educational community has been very patchwork, it's been very varied. I think some TVET institutions, for example, that have a history of dealing with distance learning or online or blended learning, those institutions, I think, whilst they're not perfect, they've been able to minimize the disruption in some way. And so, for example, the Canadian education system, where I came from, I can think of some examples where they've got a lot of experience with that, and it's been slightly less disruptive. But for Africa and other places too, if you don't have the infrastructure set up for distance learning, then that will definitely mean that that's one less avenue for education systems to be able to continue training. So BILT doesn't have any, we don't have a magic bullet to fix that. I think if we did, we'd be in a lot higher demand. But what we want to do is we want to work with the TVET stakeholders such as yourselves in Africa, in Asia, and the Pacific and Europe, to say, like, because of things like COVID, because of the digitalization of our workplaces and society, how are you addressing these things to make sure that learners are not disrupted? How can we guarantee that the skills we teach to learners will still be valid in 5 years' time and so forth? So this is a really big challenge for the entire world, COVID is, and it's definitely caused a lot of disruption. Vera, do you have any comments to add?
Well, the only thing I can add to your response, Tristan, is that please have a look at the BILT website, and which we'll be presenting later during this workshop, and you'll find BILT innovation and learning practices. These are examples of how TVET institutions meet this type of challenges, as Tristan was saying before those. So that is really what we're doing with BILT, collecting strategies, approaches, solutions from different stakeholders, and that might help you in your local context to also try and meet those challenges.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And something that we have been learning as a project so far is that the successful examples, and there are many of them, there's one or two key reasons why they're very successful. And it's not just that they have the infrastructure of a Northern European state, for example, things like this. It's that a range of TVET stakeholders are collaborating successfully to really deliver local training solutions and provide what industry requires. So in not every country do education providers and industry and then government play well together, so to speak. So some countries this is good, some countries there's some lessons learned and some work to still be done. So what we're trying to do is to analyze, like, why is this example successful? How can other TVET stakeholders look at this example and perhaps learn and implement something like that for their own TVET systems? So I think it's partly structural too, like not every institution has the money to be able to implement a wide-ranging digitalization strategy and implement amazing broadband and biotechnology. So it's really a multifaceted issue, and we do hope to learn from African stakeholders such as yourselves, like, how have you addressed learning in the age of COVID? Like, what are local industry telling you in terms of digitalization and the other BILT themes? So I really appreciate your question, and I hope that we'll have more opportunity to provide answers on how BILT is addressing all of these themes. Mm-hmm. So does that hopefully provide a little bit of an answer? Okay, Alexander, do we have any more questions, please?
Maybe a third question for this moment. We'll try and address all of the questions by the end of this workshop, but maybe one for now, Alexandra. Okay, Peter Monari, you please turn on your camera and your microphone, and your question is welcome.
Hello, Peter.
Good afternoon or good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
You can hear me around?
Yes.
We can, thank you.
My question is in regards to the new competencies that in your question that you asked, what is most relevant in Africa? I would like to understand more in regards to Industry 4.0, where most of the developed countries are emerging to be good in Industry 4.0, but here in Africa, we find that the technologies that are involving Industry 4.0, we are still lagging behind. So what are you working on to be able to enable Africa and African institutions to be, in terms of the new competencies in TVET, they are surrounding around Industry 4.0, by where you find like countries like Germany, they're very good in Industry 4.0, Japan is very good in robotics. So in Africa, we also want to understand how can we be able to develop our institutions, and when we are training, we benchmark with the international community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So perhaps we can come back to this question of which qualifications and competencies are relevant. And within this question we're also looking at digital competencies. So we'll be publishing a trends mapping study on new qualifications and competencies shortly. And in this trends mapping study, you will see a list of digital competencies that are relevant according to international literature. We'll be continuing to work on this topic with an expert group. This is something we present later today from autumn 2020 onwards. So through these means, we hope to provide some answers to this question. And besides this listing of competencies, then we're also trying to see how can we integrate them then into your TVET system, in your curricula and training regulations, and how can we implement them in practice in terms of innovative methods. And again, we'll have examples from European countries, but also from Asian countries and African countries that show how that can work. And you can get inspired by those examples, but also, of course, by the work that we're doing through the trends mapping study and through the experts group that is hopefully providing an element of an answer to that type of question. Anything you'd like to add, Tristan?
No, I think that was a pretty comprehensive response. Thank you. So did we answer your question there?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Looking forward for the same.
Thank you, Peter. It's really good to see your interest in these different BILT themes. You wanted to say something, Tristan?
No, just that I think we'll move on from the questions now and continue with the Zoom, continue with the presentation, but there will be more opportunity for questions later.
And we try to cover all of them by the end of this workshop. So don't hesitate to put any further questions in the chat. And now let's switch to the next slide. Perfect. Thank you, Max.
Thank you very much.
So now we've learned about the rationale of the BILT project and its goals. And I'd now like to present events that have taken place in 2019 with the BILT project to make a little retrospective. So BILT officially started with its kickoff conference in Bonn in July 2020. So that's a little more than 1 year ago. And after that, we held a workshop on each of the BILT themes that was organized at different Univox centers in Europe between October and December 2019. If you look, for example, at the top right bottom, the workshop on new qualifications and competencies, our overarching topic was or took place at Swiss Univox Centers TVET in Switzerland. So different Univox centers become hosts for such types of events. And the purpose of these workshops was to enter the respective topics, to discuss key questions, to discuss sub-themes, but also very importantly, to share innovative project and program examples and to propose these examples as BILT innovation and learning practices after the event. We've mentioned these practices before. They're published on our website, and we'll explain later how you can also present an example and hand in as a BILT innovation and learning practice to be considered to be published on the UNESCO-UNEVOC website. After the workstream workshops between October and December 2019, BILT was officially launched on a global scale during UNESCO-UNEVOC's Global Forum in Bonn. You can see a group picture on this slide. We had a special project session on the BILT project. Some of you may have taken part in this project session. And all together with the kick-off, the workshops and the global launch, BILT held 7 international events in 6 countries in a 6-month period in 2019. And that's a record for UNESCO-UNEVOC, so congratulations.
Okay, so within BILT, one of the objectives that we wanted to achieve is we wanted to provide a space for interaction between TVET stakeholders. Because as we all know, there are a lot of great things going on in TVET. There are a lot of institutions doing things, but sometimes you don't always have the time and the space to have that interaction, to find out what stakeholders are doing and just sharing that knowledge. So for BILT, one way that we wanted to facilitate that was through the hosting of either physical or virtual bridging events. And so we wanted this to be that way, to offer the opportunities for networking, to share knowledge within the different BILT thematic areas. And so, as you can see on the screen, we do this here via our bridging line of work. Additionally, another goal we had, back one please. Additionally, another goal we had is to create thematic publications for practical use by TVET stakeholders. So to this end, an expert group in new qualifications and competencies will begin working on this topic in Q3 2020, so very soon. And the focus for 2020 and 2021 is actually on the overarching BILT thematic area of new qualifications and competencies in TVET. So after that is done, we hope to put a yearly focus on the other BILT themes and produce additional publications. So we do this within BILT via our publication line of work, as you see.
Now let us have a closer look at this blue line, at the bridging line of work of the BILT project. What events will take place as part of this bridging line? We had a very similar workshop to the workshop we are holding right now with Univox Centers and other TVET stakeholders from Asia and the Pacific in July 2020. Right now, the Africa workshop is taking place now in September 2020. And following this, we very much hope to be able to hold 3 physical bridging events in the first half of 2021. Of course, if Corona allows us to, if not, we'll find creative digital solutions to still be able to meet you and to exchange, but hopefully these events can take place. The European bridging event will hopefully take place in Estonia, the Asian bridging event hopefully in Singapore, and most importantly for you, we hope to be able to organize a physical bridging event at the Univox Center, Cape Coast University in Ghana. This will hopefully take place in late Q2 2021, and that would be the first physical bridging event with Europe and Africa. The goal of these bridging events will be to further orient participants to the BILT project, but also to share examples of successful TVET practices in all of the BILT thematic areas. So we're not bound to one of the thematic areas, but that's an opportunity for you to present a successful practice from your country or your institution in one of the BILT thematic areas, but also, of course, to learn from the successful practices of others. And after the events, you can propose your examples as a BILT innovation and learning practice. And the results of this bridging line, also of the red line of the thematic line on new qualifications and competencies, but of this bridging line also will be shared at the BILT Learning Summit at the end of 2021, hopefully in December 2021, and it will bring together stakeholders from all participating regions, that is to say from Europe, from Africa, and from Asia.
Okay, so we talked a little bit too about the trends mapping study on new qualifications and competencies. So for the BILT project, this trends mapping study is an entry point to the preparation of our thematic publication on new qualifications and competencies in TVET. So as Vera said, we conducted this in the first half of this year, and the results of this will be published shortly. So this will actually form the basis for a new qualifications and competencies experts group that we are currently forming, made up from TVET stakeholders from the UNESCO-UNEVOC network and some from outside, to work on this topic. So they will begin Q3 2020 and divided into 3 subgroups. Each group will address a different level of need for TVET stakeholders. So the TVET stakeholders, the experts groups, they will actually meet regularly over the next year to work on this, work on these publications. And as part of that writing process and that finalization process, we will be asking for interest from Univox Centers to participate in a validation activity. And that will be another opportunity that some of you can interact with BILT to provide input onto this process and to actually participate and provide feedback on the development itself. So after that, the end result would be the publication of these 3 thematic guides, which we hope will be practically oriented for TVET stakeholders, and these will be presented at the BILT Learning Forum in December 2021. Okay, so we've talked an awful lot, and maybe you want to hear from some other people about what their motivation is for participating in BILT. So we have asked for 3 participating Univox centers who have been engaged with BILT in various capacities to speak to you on camera now and talk a little bit about why they participated in BILT, what are they finding interesting, and what you might also learn if you participate. So I'd like to introduce first Anu Musil. She's the VET Senior Specialist at the Education and Youth Authority in Estonia, and that they recently changed their name from a foundation in Norway, for those of you that are aware. So Anu, may I please ask you to put your camera on and say a few words to the group?
Hello to everyone. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Yes. Hello again, and my name is Anu Musil. I am from Estonia, as you said, Tristan, and I am Vocational Education and Training Senior Specialist in Education and Youth Authority. Organization Education and Youth Authority is a national body, and this is under the Ministry of Research and Education. We are participating in the BILT project since it's started. We shared our experience in different workshops in Europe, for example, as digitalization, entrepreneurship, new qualifications and competencies. We think that BILT is unique because of the international dimension, as well as carefully selected topics, the expert working groups, and the methodology of the project. We learned that despite differences in the education systems of the member states, the problems and challenges are actually very similar. The focus needs to be on the decreasing numbers of students in TVET, initial education and training, and increasing interest in CVET, continuing education and training, as well as modular learning, output-based assessment, and much more. Thanks to BILT, we are aware of the fact that bridging future-oriented qualifications and competencies for relevant TVET careers into practice is not an easy but crucial task. We are grateful for this experience and are happy to contribute to the following activities of the BILT project. Thank you.
Excellent.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Anu. We really appreciate the participation of you today, but also the ongoing support of you and your colleagues and your institution in the BILT project. So we look forward to continuing to work with you, Education and Youth Authority, your new name just changed. And so I wish you every success going forward.
Thank you.
So the next speaker I'd like to ask, please, is Dr. Christina Boateng. She is the Univox Center Coordinator at the Cape Coast University in Ghana. So Christina, please.
Good morning, everyone. Here in the University of Cape Coast, we are involved in TVET teacher education and research. And one of our vision is that eventually one day we would become a TVET center of excellence in Ghana. So we got to know of the BILT at the launch in Bonn, December 2019. And we got interested because as a teacher education institution, we do a lot of entrepreneurial training. So we're interested in entrepreneurship, we're interested in the new qualifications and the competencies for our students who will eventually end up as TVET teachers. We were also interested in the greening of TVET through our curriculum, through our campuses. So that is how we got involved. And since then, we were looking to work with the UNESCO-UNEVOC Center in Bonn to actually host the regional African Regional Conference here in Cape Coast. We started the planning in January, and unfortunately by March, COVID came in to interrupt, our planning process. But as it's been heard from Tristan and Vera, we are hopeful that come next year, 2021, we'll get the opportunity to host all of you here in Cape Coast. We are very excited because one, we think that this is a good opportunity for us to learn from our European counterparts, as well as all of you within the African region. And so we're keeping our fingers crossed, hoping that by the second quarter of 2021, we will all meet here in Cape Coast for you to experience our beautiful campus, which is set up on the Atlantic coast. Thank you very much. And I hope to see all of you.
Great. Thank you very much, Christina. Likewise, we're also very excited to work with the Cape Coast University, and COVID notwithstanding, we hope to be able to have an activity with you, and I'm sure we'll be able to work that out. Like I said to Anu, we really appreciate you taking the time to participate today and also to work with us in the BILT project. So this is exciting, so thank you. So our last speaker, last but not least, someone we know very well. His name is Luis Aquilina. He is the Director of International Partnerships at the Malta College of Arts, Science and Technology in Malta. So Luis, please take the floor.
Thank you, Tristan. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I really enjoyed this session, this webinar session between all of us, between Europe and Africa. One thing that really came about is the question, why? Why are we doing BILT? Why is BILT around? And I think we need to step back a little and understand that the world is different than from it were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's grown smaller. We have seen from the COVID that in March, nearly all the countries were affected. Now, being a smaller world means that we need to collaborate more. Rather than spending resources to reinvent the wheel, we can actually share a lot of knowledge between us. And we stand to gain, all of us stand to gain. And this is actually exactly what the BILT is about. It is fundamental to know that the bridging word in BILT is really for that reason. As Christian kindly said, I am the Director for the Partnerships Office at AMCAS at the Malta College of Arts, Science and Technology. I am also the Director of the International Office as well. We are a professional vet institution, so we have taken vet to a higher level now. We have got professional status, and we have got our students who can actually get bachelor's degrees and even master's degrees in vocational education. We are also the UNESCO-UNEVOC Center in Malta, and we actively participate in UNEVOC activities. What is the gain, one of the major gains of the BILT project? Well, actually, it's knowledge sharing. It is an excellent platform for knowledge sharing. We were involved directly in one of the thematic areas, the greening area, and in the thematic workshop that was held in Malta in October last year, we had a number of participants who could share with us, and we shared with them what they were doing in greening. And actually, the benefit that came out from this workshop was enormous. Every participant went back home with a lot of ideas and things that could be implemented in their own context, because that is something which is very, very common with UNESCO-UNEVOC. There is no imposition, but actually you go, you learn about new ideas, and then you can apply to your own context, nationally, locally. I pointed out, I took note and jotted 3 key elements of the BILT that we have noted there. It is an excellent platform for exchange, knowledge exchange, a lot of knowledge sharing between the partners and the participants, and the networking element. We still have a lot of friends and contacts learned through the BILT project that we are networking with and sharing information. So this is not something that is done and dusted and that's it. No, it continues to grow. And it all depends on us as individuals to tap on this platform and be able to share and gain information. All the 5 thematic areas are important. There was the voting before, and we saw that there were some areas that are more important than others, but actually, locally, you can have a different view. All the 5 areas are very, very important. And there's a wealth of information to be shared on each of them. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lewis. We also really, again, appreciate your participation. And I think something that you said there I'd like to pick up on. The success of BILT is really down to the participation of the stakeholders. We as the BILT team, we love working with you, but we're just facilitating that process. Without the TVET community, the Univox Centers, and those other TVET stakeholders with the great examples, the project wouldn't succeed. So we're really glad and we're happy, Lewis, that the event did go very well. I'm great to see that the networking you did there is bearing some fruit for your institution. And so that's really great to see. So thank you very much.
If I can add maybe one point, thanks a lot to Lewis and the other participants who've given a short testimonial. And Lewis, as you've been saying, some of the themes might be important in some local context and less important in other contexts. So if we have done this rating, that doesn't mean that one of these would drop out of the BILT perspective. We'll be keeping them all on our in our project, and we'll be working on all of them. So if you're interested in one of them that it's been rated a little lower, still you'll be able to share your examples in these themes and to learn from other examples. So thank you for this contribution, Lewis, again.
You're welcome.
So we hope that you enjoyed the testimonials and that maybe they provided some ideas on why your institution might want to participate. Oh, it is okay. Sorry, my mistake. Reading comprehension failure. So we talked a little bit about the events, and so the next opportunity will be for participating in an online workshop in December of this year. So this will be another chance for TVET stakeholders from Europe, from Africa, and from Asia and the Pacific regions to collaborate. So right now we don't have this event fully prepared to reveal, but this will be something that we communicate separately after this. After that, the next opportunity will be hopefully during the event at Cape Coast University in Ghana. So we put a tentative date here because of COVID. As you all know, this has meant many changes. So as soon as we have a date confirmed, we'll be able to share more information about this event with the TVET community. But that'll be something where we're really looking for wide participation from the UNEVOC network, but also from stakeholders outside of that. So if you want to participate in that, perhaps now you can please consider if your institution or if a particular thematic expert in your institution, maybe they have a good example of how you're addressing one of the BILT themes. Maybe that's something that you want to share. So we really want to learn from you. We want to hear about those examples. And we want to have as much participation in this event as possible. So whilst the primary audience are Univox centers, we're also casting a wider net than that, because we recognize that the Univoc network is not the be-all and end-all of TVET. It's a global platform, sure, but there are other stakeholders in TVET out there that are doing great work in TVET. So we'd also be asking for your help in the Univoc network, and close to the time, like, who is doing the great work outside of the UNIVOC network? What TVET stakeholders in your country or in your region are doing great things that maybe we should be made aware of? So we really hope to have UNIVOC centers and some non-UNIVOC centers participate in that event at Cape Coast.
So in addition to these two types of opportunities that Tristan has just described, and which are ways for you to get involved in BILT, a third way is to take part in the validation process that Tristan has mentioned earlier. This will concern the publication on new qualifications and competencies, and this process will happen in Q2 and Q3 2021. If your institution or you decide to take part in this process, you will receive a draft of the publication which concerns the type of TVET institution that you represent, and you will be asked to collect feedback on whether it's applicable in your institutional or local context, what ways of improvement you see, and subsequently you will have a chance to share your feedback with the experts and the experts group during a physical meeting in 2021. So the validation process is another way to get involved in BILT. And finally, we would like to invite you to the BILT Learning Summit, which will take place in December 2021, hopefully also as a physical event. And that will really be an opportunity to get to know various TVET stakeholders from Europe, Africa, and Asia and the Pacific, and to learn about the BILT activity results from both working lines, that is to say from the bridging line with the examples that are collected, and from the thematic line on new qualifications and competencies. And of course, besides these events listed on the slide, you're always welcome to propose your institution as a host for future BILT events. Thereby, you can assume a lead role in the BILT project. If you wish to propose your institution, please get in touch with the BILT team, and we'll try and see jointly which opportunities and possibilities come up in the future. Now, we've spoken about possible ways for you to get involved in BILT, and now we'd like to know, with a second little opinion poll, which of these activities you're interested in and why, which may seem a little less engaging or interesting to you and why, and perhaps you also thinking of additional and different ways of getting involved in BILT activities that we as a BILT team should consider. So now a Zoom poll should appear on your screen. We invite you to take part in this poll. We give you a little time for this. And please also take the time to think of additional comments and questions. And again, just use the hand raise button if you want to speak, or put your question and comment in the chat. Now we can see that a large number among you, 84%, is interested in the bridging event in Ghana, which certainly is a major event on our bridging line and a very important occasion to meet. And I think that if we can meet physically and in person, this will create a whole different atmosphere. So I think you're right in having a big preference for this meeting. You're also interested in the follow-up online workshop in December 2020. That is where not only African stakeholders, but also stakeholders from Europe and Asia and the Pacific will join. So a first opportunity to also meet other TVET experts from other world regions, and I can see that another 79% of you is interested in the BILT Learning Summit in the end of 2021. So all of these are events where you can meet other people and exchange with others.
And thank you for taking the time to do this, because as with the last Zoom poll, this information helps us as a team to plan how we engage directly with you, the TVET stakeholders. So, for example, COVID has already caused us to push back our physical events by a year and adopt more online things. So for BILT, this is the first time in the new UN video studio here, for example, very exciting. So these are ways that we might consider engaging with stakeholders in the future. So if there is a preference for an online event where we can reach a wider audience that doesn't bring physical people together, then that's also something we can consider. So thanks for taking the time.
And generally, we can see that all of these types of opportunities to join seem interesting for you. So that's also great to learn that also the BILT innovation and learning practices are interesting for you. And now I'd like to ask our colleague Alexandra whether there's any hand raised and anyone who'd like to comment on this. Perhaps you have additional ideas on how you'd like to take part in BILT. Perhaps you have a question. So Alexandra.
Thank you, Vera. Yes, sorry for the sound problem last time. So yes, we have been receiving a lot of written questions through the chat. Most of them actually are regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and the thematic area of digitalization. So participants were asking, how can digitalization ensure that learners acquire required skills? They were asking about how to establish and enhance digital platforms in Africa. So participants there were also stating that there is a decline in the literacy rates, especially in rural areas due to COVID in Africa. They were asking to share strategies of implementing digitalization in TVET. So yeah, we already discussed this thematic area a little bit. So we have another question regarding digitalization, but there is also one regarding greening. So it's a very simple question, actually. And the question is from Ali Shi, and she is asking us, what does greening in TVET mean?
Yes, I can.
Maybe we can ask Lewis, I'm not sure.
Oh, looks like Lewis.
Yes.
Please take this question, Lewis.
Yes. Well, actually, so greening in TVET, greening is an international issue now. It's how we will leave the world for future generations, and hopefully we'll leave it better. Now, greening per se in TVET applies transversally. So there are a lot of things and tasks in different areas of TVET that are linked to greening. Just to give you an example, in engineering, like renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy, that is related to greening. Like, for example, even in administrative work, using less paper, going into digitalization, going electronically, and therefore saving on paper. There is also waste recycling, separation of waste, etc., etc. All these things also then eventually generate new skills and competencies, because to work in solar energy, you need to have a special skill and competence. to work in, for example, in waste recycling, there are certain tasks, etc., etc. So greening, although it is a very generic word, can be applied transversally across all vocational education and training skills. I hope that answers the question.
That's a great answer, Luis. Thank you so much for taking this question. Perhaps there's one aspect I can add from the BILT perspective. We have worked on different strategies, how you can integrate skills and competencies in the different BILT thematic areas in TVET training. And if we're looking at green skills, Luis has given us a good understanding of what greening means. But if we're looking at green competencies, you were speaking of transversal skills, Luis. So one strategy we've identified with the BILT project is a cross-cutting strategy whereby you would integrate green competencies in all curricula and training regulations in a general way so that they're relevant for all TVET learners of one system. You could also integrate green competencies in a sector-specific way. That is to say, you could integrate green competencies in curricula of one sector. Think of the logistics sector, for example, where you could save a lot of energy by improving transport ways. You could integrate green competencies in an occupation-specific way. That is to say, for a specific occupation. Think of someone who's selling things in a store. They could be aware of how they could save waste, for example. And finally, one way of integrating such competencies in TVET training we've identified with BILT is an additional way. So you could create an additional module on greening and propose these to TVET learners. They could choose to complete these modules if they're interested in greening. And that is just an addition to this question and something we've worked on with the BILT project. And one final remark I'd like to make, perhaps Tristan would also like to say something about greening TVET, but I think it's really interesting or important to see how COVID and digitalization is connected. And this is underlined and emphasized by you during this workshop via your questions. Thanks to Alexandra for revealing these questions, and that is definitely something we will focus on also in the future with BILT.
Thank you, Vera. And thank you, Luis, for fielding the question too. The reason I asked Luis is because MCAST is doing a lot of work in greening, and they submitted a bridging innovation and learning practice, a BILT example. And that is something that they're sharing with the TVET community. So this is one way that we engage with the TVET stakeholders that are doing really strong or innovative things to address these themes, to help share that knowledge with other stakeholders. So thank you again, Luis. So Alexandra, do we have any questions or hands raised relating to our poll question about activities? Does anybody have a question about the BILT activities? Please raise your hand if so.
Currently, we don't have any raised hands.
Okay.
We have one though in the chat. So in the chat window, I'm going just to read this question. Can the event in Ghana be done virtually if the COVID-19 situation would not have been contained?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Can we host this event virtually? It's actually a conversation that we have had with the Cape Coast University, but not just them, it's with all of our TVET stakeholders, because a virtual event is very different from a physical event. One of the primary reasons we want physical events is because of the networking. It's very different for Vera and I to be here like this and have this networking opportunity, whereas if we are at home doing it via distance. So our preference is for physical events, but with COVID, we really can't say what will happen. So as a contingency, we are exploring online-only events. And this isn't as simple as just Tristan saying, hey, we'd like to do that, and it happens, because every institution is different in terms of the information technology infrastructure that they have, the human resources available to coordinate and facilitate an event like that. It really is, even though it sounds easy, an online event and organizing an online event is actually quite a lot of work. So it's a conversation we're having with stakeholders. Our preference is for physical, but if COVID means we have to do online events more, then that's something we definitely do. And much like this one, which is our first one in the studio here, we're open to suggestions from you on what is the best way to communicate with you? Like, what is the best way to share knowledge and have an event? So if the preference is for virtual events more than physical, then that's something as a team that we will discuss, and we'll discuss it with our stakeholders as well, because it's a really valuable opportunity to have a physical event such as what we'd like to do at Cape Coast University. And we really want to, if we can, do that, because it's not just about the BILT event, it's about you networking, creating those contacts, sharing that information, and it won't just be African stakeholders. We'll hopefully bring some European Univox Centers there, maybe some Asian Pacific stakeholders too, and stakeholders from outside that. So yeah, I guess the short answer is we're trying all things out, yeah. Does that answer the question, hopefully? I think maybe we can have one more question, please, Alexandra, and then we'll move on with the rest of the presentation.
Yes, we're getting some more reactions. So we have some hands raised. So let's hear from Samson Soshil. I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, please.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, perfectly.
Hello, Samson.
Hello. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I would like you to explain further on the issue of submitting a BILT innovation and learning practice. Explain further on that, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So
I'm okay. Yeah.
So the question relates to bridging innovation and learning practice examples, or BILPs, as we're calling them for short. So what we've been doing in BILT so far is when we're engaging with the stakeholders in Europe or Asia and Pacific and Africa soon, is we want to understand how your institution are addressing the BILT themes. So at the workshops we had in Europe, we asked Univox Centers and other stakeholders to submit examples. So how is Norway addressing digitalization? How is Malta addressing greening? Things like this. These were the responses that came to us. And as a team, we discussed which were the strong examples and which ones we wanted to share. And so at the workshops, what we actually made people do was we actually made them work. It wasn't just a coffee and cake event. So we made everybody that participate present their examples to the group, and it was very much an experts workshop. So everyone that came and presented was intimately familiar with the example of how their institution is addressing these themes. So over 2 days, we spent time presenting those examples, talking about them, everything like what is the added value of those examples? What are lessons learned that other stakeholders can take away? Like what is the impact on curricula of your example, and so forth. And so what we did after that is we really dived a little bit deeper to collect more information, and we packaged it as a BILT. So Bridging Innovation Learning Practice is really it's a document that we've created that shares this information with the TVET community. So towards the end, actually at the end of the event today, we'll actually ask Alexandra to show you one of those. And we have many published. We have 12 or 14 published on our website. We'll have 25 published soon. And Bridging Innovation Learning Practice is really an example, or innovative or excellent example, however you want to phrase it, of how a TVET institution is addressing one of the themes. So if you feel like you have an example that could qualify, we have a template that we're asking TVET stakeholders to complete. And so what we did for Europe is we just send it out to the European network, and this is something that we would do to the African UNIVOC network too. And then we really ask those stakeholders, like, outside of those networks, do you know of other TVET stakeholders that are doing great things that they can share and participate? So to have a BILT, you don't have to be a Univox center. And in fact, many of our BILTs are not from Univox centers, they're from outside the network. So Samson, if you're interested in that, we can send you the template for what we're calling our BILTs. And we'd ask you to complete that, please, and send that back to us. And that'll be part of a dialogue that the BILT team has with you as a TVET stakeholder. And we'll talk about how that might be able to fit in as a BILT, or maybe it's something that you want to present at the Ghana event and so forth.
And it was actually the perfect moment to ask this question, because we're now, this is a good segue to the next point we're covering, which is the BILT website that our colleague Alexandra Filipova will now present, and she will actually also show an example of a BILT, so of a BILT innovation and learning practice. So you will see what elements this covers, and you will see that it's not about broad programs of a whole country, but it's really about specific projects, specific programs that your institution, maybe even a TVET school in your country, is carrying out. So please, Alexandra, or unless Tristan wanted to say something else.
Only that my clicker isn't working again. Max, can you please move the screen on? I think it's the Zoom poll. It doesn't play well with this.
Then let's go for the website tour.
All right, thank you very much.
Alexandra is screen sharing.
Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Great. So yes, we wanted to bring your attention to the BILT website, www.univoc.unesco.org/BILT, where you can access a range of resources associated with the project. So here you can read about the project, see our upcoming events. Further down, you can consult our news and download the project resources, including the BILT innovation and learning practices, the summary report to the BILT events, and the project partner publications, like for instance this one on human migration and TVET by University of Nottingham. So this is an example of BILT innovation and learning practice in the thematic area of greening. It describes the added value of the initiative, its impact on curricula, and it also explains how this practice can be transferable to other TVET institutions. So at the bottom we have the contact person to get in touch with, and usually we also put some links to know more about the project. Those icons on the right will take you to the thematic pages of the website, which are, by the way, also accessible from here. So on the thematic pages, you can read about the current TVET challenges in this thematic area and how BILT addresses these challenges. And at the bottom of the page, you also have the thematic resources section. So finally, the third section of our website is dedicated to our bridging component. Here we invite you to explore the BILT network. So for now, BILT connected 73 institutions in 37 countries through 8 international events. So you can hover over the network to see the connections that the institutions made through BILT, or click to get more information about each institution, and you can also use a drop-down list. So to see the events we held so far, scroll through the BILT events list, and here at the bottom, you will find our contact information, so please don't hesitate to write to us at univoc.bilt@unesco.org. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and also check our Flickr account. And the address of the website is again www.univoc.unesco.org/BILT. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alexandra.
That's great. Thank you very much, Alexander, providing a quick tour of the website. So what we really want to encourage you as stakeholders to do is to look at some of the resources that we have generated there. And it's not just generated by the BILT team, it's working in partnership with Univox Centers and other stakeholders. So together we're creating this content, we're sharing this information with you, and we really look forward to having our bridging events with Africa and our bridging events with stakeholders in Asia and the Pacific region to really expand on that. So there's a lot of things to download, there's a lot of things to look at, but also contact information there as well. And if you just Google Univoc BILT, you can also get us the quick way too.
So it looks like we've already come to the end of our online session, at least to the content that we wanted to provide. Thank you everyone for your attention. As a BILT team, we're really happy that this event can take place virtually, as it was originally planned to be part of a physical bridging event. But of course, COVID-19 has urged all of us to find creative alternative solutions, and we're really lucky to be able to communicate with you via this type of channel. And now we have a little bit of time left for a final discussion and question round. Before that, you can see on the slide is our contact information. You may get in touch with us via the general Univoc BILT email address. You can also send an email to either Tristan or myself if you have further questions, follow-up questions after this workshop. If you'd like to make any propositions, please feel free to get in touch with us. And now I'd like to invite you to again use the hand raised function. I can see one already that is raised, or otherwise to put questions in the chat so that we can have a final round of discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vera. So we have presented a lot of information to you today. We tried to make it interesting, we tried to make it engaging, but there's only so much you can do in an hour and 30 minutes. So we invite you to ask questions now, but it's not the final and only opportunity you have. If you want to contact us afterwards, we really would encourage you to do that, and we look forward to engaging with you that way. But does anybody have any questions for us now, please?
I think I raised my hand.
Oh, please, Emmanuel, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Emmanuel Osinen from University of Nigeria, Nsukka Univox Center. Our faculty engages in vocational teacher preparation, both at the undergraduate and postgraduate level. And to us, BILT project appears really very innovative in the sense that it addresses the key challenges in the TVET sector. New qualifications talks about how to enable learners overcome changes in occupational, due to occupational changes. And the green in TVET is something we've been into, and digitalization is really increasing. And to us also, we'll see it as a way of creating novel approaches in TVET delivery that will make TVET teaching and learning stimulating to students, because before now it is usually regarded that TVET is stressful, hard labor, and all that. But with incorporation, integrating digitalization, it makes it a little easier, and entrepreneurship also very key and important. Then what I want to pose as a question is, within the structure of BILT project, what strategy are you adopting to engage stakeholders that will contribute to policy impact? In other words, are national regulatory authorities sufficiently involved or structured or made to key into BILT projects such that beyond what institutions can do, for us, for example, and the action we know that can be done is that The BILT project has implications for curriculum review, curriculum restructuring in various TVET subject areas. But beyond that, there may be some overarching issues and actions that should be taken at national level, which engaging such stakeholders that will make such impact will be very necessary in the BILT project. So.
Okay, I can take this question. Yeah, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Maybe one element of response to that can be the work of our experts group that will start working from Q3 2020 onwards, that is to say very soon, hopefully. And this expert group will be divided in different levels. This is what Tristan explained earlier. So one level will address the needs of the government level. So how can you structurally implement those new qualifications and competencies? The other levels will address the development level, that is to say the work of national institutions, associations, chambers, and so on. How can they improve the development of new qualifications and competencies? And finally, the level of local TVET providers, how can they implement these? And because you were asking about how can we use the BILT results to then change something structurally, I think the thematic publications on new qualifications and competencies might be something that is helpful for you, specifically the publication which addresses the governance level and which gives you more ideas about how new qualifications and competencies can successfully be integrated in your TVET system. I hope this answers your questions. Maybe Tristan has an addition.
I can just add to that. So thank you very much, Emmanuel, for your question. So one of the things that we've been doing in BILT so far, particularly part of the trends mapping study, which will form the basis for the experts groups on new qualifications and competencies, we've been trying to find out just what stakeholders are involved in the process of identifying new qualifications and competencies. How are they then formulated and integrated into curricula and training regulations? So we had a survey of that before, and we'll be aiming to do a survey, I think, for Africa and for Asia and the Pacific too. And that's really where we want to understand from you, who are the stakeholders involved at that high level? Is it just the ministries? Are, for example, youth organizations involved? How much say does local industry have? Things like that. So we really appreciate the question, but Vera's response was right in that we will be hoping to have these three levels that will look at the different responses that TVET stakeholders can hopefully use to address new qualifications and competencies through the lens of then greening, entrepreneurship, digitalization, and migration, for example.
I hope this is a reply to your question.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
Any other question? Any raised hand, Alexandra, from the participants?
Yes, we have a raised hand from Ashutosh Agarwal. And Ashutosh, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My question is, a lot of things have been done in TVET with you, as I can see the presentation. Do you have any framework wherein, if you know the body like ISEC, so they do trainings and internships for the students all around the globe. So do you have something for this kind of training which we can organize for industries? The students can come to the industries, the teachers can come to the industries worldwide for a training 1 month, 2 months, and the industry can sponsor the training for them. So this will really help in building the TVET systems all across the globe. I know in Germany and Switzerland especially, they have dual training system wherein the students are given theoretical as well as a practical training on the industries. But this is not implemented in a lot of parts in the world. So do you have any policies for this kind of things to happen?
Currently, the BILT project doesn't have policies on that, for example. But what we're asking TVET stakeholders to do is to show us how they've been how they've been successful via their examples. And so a case in point I can think of, for example, in Portugal and even in Spain, is some of the BILTs that we saw there were how to closely engage industry into the TVET process so that students do actually have the opportunity to perhaps take an internship, or they have the opportunity to learn using equipment that then they would use once they actually get into the factory or into the market, so to speak. So we do have examples from BILT so far, and I mentioned it earlier about the strong examples and the successful examples. They really all demonstrate this the successful collaboration between government at various levels, local industry, national industry, but also TVET stakeholders themselves, like the training institutions. And it's not everywhere, obviously, but we do have some examples of that. And that might be something that's interesting for you to look at, to see exactly how they do that and how they facilitate the relationship to allow for those things, because not everyone can do that. For example, in some Nordic countries, they're donating very expensive equipment. In Canada, this happens too. Companies give very expensive equipment to TVET institutions, and so students actually get to learn and use it, and then they provide them with internships as well. But that's not something that you can just create overnight. Building those kind of relationships and creating those systems really takes time and investment. So one thing that perhaps you can learn from the BILT examples we have in Europe and hopefully Asia Pacific and Africa is what are the dynamics you need to be able to create those strong partnerships with industry, those strong relationships with government to be able to provide paid internships or the opportunity to try out equipment, things like that. Does that answer your question, Ashutosh?
Yeah, it answers the questions like, is it possible I can give a suggestion if you are open to it?
Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, so like what I suggest, like maybe under the BILT, we can create a data bank of industries which are willing to get the trainees from outside the world. Like, so we have very good experience with trainees in the engineering field and TVET field from Turkey, from Nigeria and South Africa. So 3 students have come from this field to our factory in India. So we manufacture training equipments, TVET equipments in India. And those 3 students have really done a fantastic job for us. In a training of around 3 to 6 months, they stayed with us. So wherein they imparted fresh thoughts, views, new ideas to our company, and then they can learn from our flows, the production and the industry. So it was amazing experience. So it could be one of the best things like you can do when you can develop a data bank about the industries worldwide who are willing to engage trainees from the world.
Okay, thank you. So if I understand correctly, the suggestion is to try and create a database or some kind of network of stakeholders that would be willing to provide those learning opportunities for TVET students.
The type of experience that you're mentioning, providing students from other countries to do an internship in your country is maybe something that you could share as an example during one of our events, and that you could discuss with other participants, so you can see how you could maybe connect with them and which other opportunities might come up in exchange with other TVET stakeholders from other countries. So this is one type of example that we're searching for.
So I'll be happy to do so. Like whenever you need my help, I'll be happy to do so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great, thank you for the question.
A further question from the participants, Alexandra, please.
So we'll now take a question of Jose Kiplagat. Jose, the virtual floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexandria. This is Jose from the University of Eldoret, Kenya. I really wanted to know, and like now today, this has been a very good meeting, and I just wanted to know if, as even we continue to engage BIL individually, I don't know how regular we'll have such events so that we continue knowing more about BIL. And also I wanted to know, like in this forum today, I don't know which other sectors are represented here, because I know we are from universities, some of us, so that probably we understand how we are constituted as we move forward as a team. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. So I caught 2/3 of that, so I apologize if I don't fully answer your question. But your question relates to how do we maintain the momentum after today, considering the different levels of stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't catch your institution other than you're in Kenya. Is that correct?
University?
University of Kenya.
University of in Kenya, yeah.
Right. So I apologize. I'm not sure if you're a Univox Center, but maintaining momentum after today, the next event will be in December. So what we're asking you to do is, how you found out about this event today was we emailed all of the African Univox Centers, and then we also put notices out via social media and on our website. So I'm assuming that that is one of the ways that you were contacted about this event today. So we have a register of all the people that participated. And so for the December event, we can contact you all to let you know when that is happening, for example, because we really want to bring in as many TVET stakeholders as possible to participate in this process. And when we have a physical event in Ghana, if you have an example, a Bridging Innovation Learning Practice example, that might be something that you want to communicate with us. And so maybe that's something that you can present during the event in Cape Coast too. So whilst the primary audience for our events is UNESCO-UNEVOC Centers, we're looking for new institutions. We're looking for new partners in that network. So just because you're not a UNEVOC Center doesn't preclude you from participating.
I think you're covering a very important point. Did I interrupt you? No, okay. I think you covered a very important point here, which is it's a different thing to just join one workshop as opposed to being engaged in process. And this is one of the things that we are aiming for with BILT. So the next event is in December, but then one process you might engage with is the validation process next year, where you can engage over a longer period of time. And we've been explaining that during the following year, we'll be focusing on this topic of new qualifications and competencies. But after that, we'll hope to also put a focus on the other thematic areas and to be able to publish or make publications on these other areas. And that is where new expert groups will be created. So that is also a way how in the future you can potentially be part of these expert groups and contribute your expertise in the different thematic areas. So thank you for this idea. Engaging continuously and over a longer period of time is definitely something important and something that will happen in the future with BILT. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you so much. And I want to report that we are a Univox Center, Universal Rate in Kenya. Thank you.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Okay, another hand raised. I can see that there's more. Alexandra.
Yes, thank you very much. So the next question or remark is from David Ongoya Amma. I just unmuted you, David.
David, please just unmute your microphone.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Now you can hear me?
Yes,
we can.
My name is, I'm David Ongoya. I'm the country manager for ABMA Education, which is an awarding body based in UK, England. We have been working with a lot of colleges and institutions in the TVET sector in Kenya. And one of the issues that I've managed to pick across is we have so many students that we are trying to help so that they can have the skills that are required in employment. But I feel some part of it is missing. How can we get feedback from the student such that they'll be able to recommend to us, for example, how they would like to be taught or what they think about the curriculum and how relevant it is to their needs? Because we also have to understand that these students, they come from different backgrounds. different background, either economic, age, gender, and such kind of things. And it will be much better that when we are implementing and making TVET better, we are able to help the students, the maximum number of students. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're picking up an important point here, and that is also something that came up with our trends mapping study. Tristan has mentioned the survey that we've conducted with European centers, and one of the questions was which types of stakeholders are involved in the process of identifying new qualifications and competencies, and a lot of respondents stated that they would wish for youth organizations to be more involved in the process and to have more chances to state what the needs and demands of students actually are, what they expect from TVET, and how TVET can be an attractive career path for them. So I think that's a very important point you're mentioning. Okay, I can see another hand. Alexandra.
We will now hear from Peter Monari. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Alexandra, for giving me the floor. The question is that I wanted to understand more, because the TVET evolves around the manufacturers and the industry. What is the UNEVOC and the related institutions, for example, conducting all the activities internationally for TVET? How do you bring manufacturers and industries? Because at the end of the day, when we train the students, when the students have been trained, they need to go to the industry and work and even get experience. So which program are you running in relation to various manufacturers from Europe, from Africa, to be able to integrate what they are doing in the industry compared to what is being done in class? Because what currently is happening is that there is a gap between the industry and the TVET institutions. You will find that the perception, for example, in Africa, in relation to TVET is very poor. Young people do not want to join TVET institutions. How can Univox centers be used through the industry to enhance the perception, the positive perception of TVET across Africa? Thank you.
Well, that's a big question. That is tackling the attractiveness of TVET versus other career paths. And case in point, in Africa, I think a legacy of the British colonial system, for example, is that some professions were favored more than others. So lawyers, doctors, engineers, things like this. And perhaps others were seen as less appealing or less attractive, things like that. So TVET in some parts of the world does have an image problem, I guess you could say. So BILT isn't specifically working on that, but it is something that we're aware of, and it is something that we're seeing from different stakeholders in BILT on how we can perhaps work to slowly change those perceptions, slowly to change those relationships. Because again, it's not something that just happens overnight. A case in point in Canada, it took them 30 to 40 years to transition from where TVET was seen as something that students that perhaps can't succeed elsewhere go and do. And so that is a process that really takes a lot of time, because you really need a lot of stakeholders involved. You need the families of students, you need the TVET training institutions, you need industry, you need chambers of commerce, you need the government. So it's not an easy fix, but it is something that some of the BILT examples might show you, like an end goal, or where did they start versus where are they now and where they want to go, because the image of TVET is definitely a challenge. So another issue that governments around the world are now seeing is that actually entrepreneurial learning and the competencies that you gain from entrepreneurial learning actually can be applied in a range of things. And these actually help students to succeed in areas that were perhaps less valued before. So these basic competencies, these things, everything from timekeeping through to social norms and communicating effectively, working under initiative, all of these other things, and I apologize, I'm not an entrepreneurship expert, but all these things with entrepreneurial learning, for example, are slowly changing the perception of TVET from governments and from stakeholders to say that actually being an entrepreneur or having this entrepreneurial learning helps people to adapt and helps learners to transition through their working life. So this is just one little example that we're seeing in TVET, and we can't give you a quick fix, but what we can say is that by sharing your story and by engaging with other TVET stakeholders, you can perhaps learn their stories and understand where they were, how they've gone through this process themselves, and perhaps what were some lessons learned? Like, what are some questions to ask when speaking with industry, when you're trying to build these relationships? We learned from Norway, what are some questions you shouldn't ask, for example? So these are kind of some of the things that we want to do with BILT. It's about this collaboration, it's about the knowledge sharing and seeing how, as TVET stakeholders, you can help each other. And so that's really where the BILT team comes in. It's facilitating that process to helping the wider TVET community.
Yes, yeah, I think that is exactly, I would exactly say the same, that BILT is maybe one piece of the puzzle. I mean, you're raising a huge issue here, the attractiveness of TVET, and we have to contribute to this attractiveness. One maybe last thing I wanted to say, because you were mentioning manufacturing as a sector, I'd like to attract your attention to one of the BILT innovation and learning practices that is already published on the BILT website. It is from one of our most active Univox Centers in Europe, which is Technica in Spain, and they've handed in an example on the manufacturing sector and how students can learn in a company with the most modern equipment. So that is maybe one of the examples you might wish to have a look at.
Yes, but definitely a long conversation, that one. But we look forward to engaging with you and other TVET stakeholders at our events to kind of explore these issues a bit more deeply.
So I can see that it's already, the time has gone by nearly. Maybe we can allow for a last question in case there's a raised hand, Alexandra.
Yes, so we don't have any more raised hands. I think to conclude, I would like to say we try to prioritize video questions in this meeting. So if your written question was unanswered, please write to the BILT team at univoc.bilt@unesco.org. So over to you, very interesting.
Right. Thank you, Alexandra. Okay, so as Tristan said before, you can always also after this event take the opportunity to send us an email, to call us, to get in touch with us. And before everyone leaves, we'd like to try out a little experiment and ask everyone to switch on their cameras so that we have a nice picture of the diversity of participants who've joined this meeting, and we can see how many people from different countries joined. So don't hesitate to turn on your camera now. I can see a lot of smiling faces. This is really nice to see. It's nice to see that all of you have joined. I hope that you now have a good impression of the BILT project and that we have been able to answer some of your questions. And I'd like to say goodbye on behalf of the German Federal Institute for VET, BIBB, and wish you a good afternoon. I can now see the mosaic of everyone who've joined. Our colleagues will take a screenshot of that. That's a really nice impression.
Okay, thank you very much, Vera. So I'd also like to thank you as well, because you've given us that most precious resource, your time. So we really appreciate you taking time out from your busy day to be with us today, to listen to what the BILT project is about. So thank you very much for doing that. We really hope to keep engaged with you. We look forward to connecting in our other events. So on behalf of the UNESCO-UNEVOC International Center for TVET in Bonn, Germany, and of course the BILT team, I want to thank you all again and wish you all a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Max, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone.
Okay, see you soon.
The
Bye.
presentations appreciated.
Thank you. We appreciate
Thanks
you
a lot.
too.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag, auf Wiedersehen.